The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting NORML.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes. It is Monday, September 20th, 2010, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Summer is slowly trickling away, but thanks for joining us here for the next 60 minutes of news, talk, interviews, information, music, comedy, and more by, for, and about the cannabis community. We are podcasting on iTunes as the NORML Daily Audio Stash, but we continue live here in our second hour with Toker Talk Radio, just for those of you joining us live on Stickam. If you'd like to get involved in the chat, just send a friend request through Stickam. We will approve it, and you can get in on the fun. Now, joining me here in the studio, back from a week of pain and torment, the engineer, the pirate, Ganja John.
I am back. I feel a lot better now.
Oh, I know, and we've done a bit of redesign here in Rolla J Studios. We got this great Jack Harrer poster from behind you there.
Right there, yeah.
Beautiful. Glad
I caught someone stealing that at the conference, so I grabbed it from him.
You are a good man, Ganja John. So let folks know how you're doing. Everything's okay now?
Yeah, I just needed some dialysis. You know, I didn't get enough the week of the conference, and I just needed my body needed to recover, I guess.
Boy, you push it, man, but we appreciate everything you do. And also, joining us here in our actual studio, Rolla J Studio, my good friend and half sister, Cannabis Carrie.
Hello, guys. Here I am in the studio.
Yay, glad to have you here.
Got my... There we go.
We're working on it.
Working on the mic.
Yeah.
But, so Carrie, you're down here, yesterday and today, getting some stuff done, helping out with, alternative medical choices out there as well. How was your weekend and your week?
Fantastic. Everybody knows I was sick last week. Wow. Feeling much better. I got a ton of rest, something I don't typically do, or at least try to do maybe once a year or so, and caught up on that. So I'm good till like 2012 now. All
right. Excellent. And of course you do the news for us right after the first break. So what's in the headlines today?
Today we've got some tech news. It's great. We've got some terrible, devastating story out of Montana.
We're having mic issues. Sorry, guys. Carrie, why don't you run over here and use my mic?
You want me to?
Yeah, okay. I do.
Sorry about that. We don't know why that mic's not coming up. We'll bring the other mic up here and see if we can get some better audio on that. But yeah, go ahead, Carrie.
Well, I just said we had some tech news. We've got some a devastating story out of Montana I have to bring to you. And then we have some NFL news. And no, it's not a player that got busted.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately.
Well, you know, it was a great football weekend for me. My beloved Boise State Broncos won their game 51-6 in Wyoming. The Oregon Ducks won, what was it,
69-0.
69-0. The Green Bay Packers won 34-7, something like that. And Brett Favre had a lousy game. Oh, it was so much fun. It was a perfect weekend for me. But it's not a football show. It is a marijuana show. So we will be back right after this break with the hemp headlines. At 20 after the hour, we got your daily Toker tunes. Carrie's got us some Roots Monday music. Then at 30 past the hour, some live recording from the Boston Freedom Rally that took place on Saturday, followed by an interview with Martin Carcieri on Obama, the drug war, and the 14th Amendment. Stay tuned. We're back after this.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation. You want to legalize it? Call your congressman today. 202-224-3121. It's free, it's easy, and you don't even have to give your name, just your zip code, and they'll hook you up to your congressman. Call 202-224-3121 and tell Congress you support marijuana legalization.
Liberate your mind. Liberate your mind.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's Normal News with Cannabis Carrie.
All right, Carrie's got the new mic. We'll see how this one works. I think we're good to go, though.
No headphones. You know those ads that ask you to text a specific word to a specific number to get the info on a product? For example, text the word vote to a specific number. The company behind this technology, Easy Texting, does tech work behind those ads, and now they have filed suit against T-Mobile in a federal court. The problem stems from Weed Maps, a phone application that connects patients in their geographic region to freely discuss and review local cannabis cooperatives, dispensaries, medical doctors, and delivery services. Weed Maps only caters to people in states that recognize medical marijuana. Easy Texting pulled the plug on the popular Weed Maps app out of fear of being shut down by T-Mobile, but the phone company cut them off anyway because, as the suit alleges, T-Mobile doesn't approve of marijuana peddlers. The suit argues that Weed Map is a legal enterprise since it is only available in medical marijuana states, and therefore T-Mobile does not have the right to censor it. The suit was filed last week in the U.S. District Court for Southern New York.
Well, once again, we have one of these companies that doesn't understand that they're dealing with a legal business. You know, we saw the same thing happen with PayPal. They dropped Celeb Stoner and they dropped California NORML's websites because they took advertising money from clinics that help people get medical marijuana cards. They don't actually distribute marijuana. They're not doing anything illegal. You know, the Supreme Court decided that doctors have that free speech right to recommend marijuana, and yet those companies they dropped. You know, and this happens with a lot of companies when we have banks, for example, that will not deal with companies that are doing medical marijuana work. For example, the Oregon NORML Cannabis Cafe and the Alternative Medical Choices Medical Clinic here in Oregon both were solicited by Unitas Credit Union out here in Portland, solicited to give them their business, you know, their checking business and so on, and to send their membership to the Unitas Credit Union. But then they canceled the accounts for both the Cannabis Cafe and the Alternative Medical Choices because they were afraid of some sort of federal rules about drug trafficking or money laundering that have absolutely no bearing on either of those two businesses, since neither of those businesses distribute marijuana for remuneration. But again, this is just morality, what it is. They're afraid of pissing off their other customers that might not think that marijuana is a medicine or might have bad views of people that use marijuana. It's all about the almighty dollar, and they don't want to piss off their other customers. It's time that we legalize this. This is something that, you know, continues because of the distinction that marijuana is criminal unless you're sick enough to not be, you know, imprisoned for it. Until we make it legal by voting yes on Prop 19, by voting yes on all the legalization initiatives that will come after it, we will continue to face this discrimination.
The family of a Montana man who killed himself is coming out publicly and saying the 21-year-old was driven to suicide by authorities who recruited him as a drug informant. Colton Peterson was given a stern deadline by the Missoula Police Department earlier this summer to hand over the names of marijuana growers. The family became increasingly concerned over the stress level of their son as he fretted about helping the police catch other growers of marijuana. The police told him he had until July 27th to bring in a list of names of people who were growing marijuana in the area. But Colton Peterson, 21, shot himself shortly before the deadline. Family members said that the pressure from the Missoula Police Department was so stressful to Colton that Colton's father, Frank Peterson, went to the police to explain that his son was nearing a mental tipping point and he shouldn't be pressured any further. Missoula Police Chief Mark Moore insists that Peterson was told that help was available if he wanted it. Now, the week before his death, Peterson was assaulted by two men reportedly collecting a drug debt. He was busted for growing marijuana and recruited as a confidential informant. He was pressured to provide a list of growers' names by 5 p.m. on July 27th, but Colton tragically shot himself at 3:30 p.m. that day instead. Police
say Peterson got on the wrong side of the law in July, working as a medical marijuana caregiver. He was licensed by the state to grow 6 marijuana plants for a single patient and 6 plants for himself, but a tip to law enforcement from an informant allegedly revealed a larger grow operation in his small apartment. The tip that led to a raid on July 26th and an eventual agreement between Peterson and detectives on Missoula's high-intensity drug trafficking area's task force said he would work as a cooperative defendant, gathering information on potentially more serious drug dealers in the area, and in exchange, police would tell prosecutors that he had cooperated with the investigation. There was no promise of immunity to Peterson, according to Chief Muir, though, and he was neither jailed nor charged with any crime. It's a very, very sad ending to this young man's life, Russ.
Well, Missoula police, was it worth it? Was this young man's life worth it? I mean, would he have gotten you enough big-time growers had he come through that you'd have finally eradicated marijuana from the state of Montana? That nobody would ever smoke pot again because this young man would, bring those kingpins to justice? I wonder how you people sleep at night when you support these prohibitionary laws. When you think that rounding up people that are growing plants in their homes and getting them to snitch on other people who are growing plants in their homes is somehow deserving of this much pressure, of this much violence. The cops and people that support prohibition, they would just say, well, he didn't have to grow marijuana. Well, yeah, he did. He was a medical user. He was growing it medically. He was following the law that was approved by the people of Montana, who now some of them like to firebomb these legal medical marijuana dispensaries. So you got this culture of fear going on in Montana, people that are terrified of the rednecks and yahoos that don't believe in marijuana's medical efficacy, and the cops, the legalized gangsters who are pressuring these young people to try to turn in their friends and turn in their associates because they were growing plants. And now we have this death to add to the death of Rachel Hoffman back in Florida in 2008, who was in a kind of a similar situation, small-time college kid, just selling an ounce here and there. They pressured her. They said, oh, you can go in and be a criminal informant, secret informant. And they set her up on a drug deal with, 1,500 ecstasy pills, 2 ounces of cocaine, $13,000 in cash, and a handgun. And the guys that she had to deal with, they took her out into the woods and shot her in the back of the head. So add to that death. Add to the kid in Michigan, Derek Kopp, ironically named, who was smoking weed in his basement apartment on campus when cops come up flashing their flashlights, wearing their body armor, coming up to his back door. He raises his hand to shield his face from the light, and they shoot him in the chest. Luckily, he survived. Is it worth it, Missoula police? Is it worth it, people of Montana, to have these deaths on your head, to try to stop people? And futilely, might I add. You will never stop people from smoking and growing marijuana. Is it worth it?
The NFL team, the Arizona Cardinals, have donated $10,000 to the group Keep Arizona Drug Free, a group whose sole purpose is to defeat Arizona Proposition 203, a measure that would legalize medical marijuana in the state. Prop 203 will appear on the November ballot and, if passed, would legalize medical marijuana for patients with the doctor's recommendation and a qualifying condition. The Cardinals team president, Michael Bidwill, is listed by the anti-Prop 203 group as a member of the group's steering committee. USA Basketball chairman Jerry Colangelo is also part of the Keep Arizona Drug Free group's effort, along with outspoken Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio. According to the anti-Prop 203 group's website, their main complaint seemed to be that Arizona's highways will be filled with stoned drivers if they allow medical marijuana, children will have a greater access, and money-grubbing doctors will sell themselves out, giving prescriptions to anyone with a little bit of cash, thus creating an abused system of marijuana addicts. The website deems marijuana as a dangerous and addictive drug and claims that there is no scientific research on marijuana's effectiveness. It also tells voters that only 2% of the people who would qualify under Prop 203 would have a serious ailment. The other estimated 98% of the people that would qualify under Prop 203 would just be abusing a drug. Arizona voters have approved the use of medical marijuana twice in the last 15 years, but in each case, the wording of the measure prevented it from becoming a law. The new proposition addresses many of those concerns of the last few failed initiatives. Dispensary systems are included in the wording, and taxation issues have also been addressed. Currently, Prop 203's polling is at a healthy 65% of voters for passing the initiative.
As if last year's playoff loss for the Packers wasn't enough reason for me to hate the Arizona Cardinals. Bidwell. Wasn't Bidwell some sort of prosecutor one time, or?
Yeah, he was a federal prosecutor for the state of Arizona, I think, in the 90s, maybe 4 or 5 years in the 90s.
Yeah, that figures. Well, Mr. Bidwell, I'm glad that you think, the Arizona Cardinals should donate money to keep, sick and disabled people from using a safe and effective medicine like they do in 14 other states. As for this notion that, the roads, what was it? The roads would be full of stone drivers if we legalize medical marijuana. Really? 14 years into this with medical marijuana, you think that will still fly? We can look over the state of California, over to the state of Oregon, 2 states that have had medical marijuana for at least a dozen years in Oregon's case, 14 years in California's case, whose laws are far more liberal than what you're going to pass in Arizona, far more liberal. And yet, the rates of DUI, accident fatalities, injuries in automobile accidents have gone down in those 2 states, and they've gone down or remained steady in all the medical marijuana states. As far as kids having more access, right now in Arizona, 85% of high school seniors say that it's easy to get a hold of marijuana. So you can't say there's going to be any easier than it is now. And in all 14 medical marijuana states, the rate of teenage use, both monthly use and lifetime use, has declined in every medical marijuana state for which there is reliable data. So these lies cannot stand anymore. Furthermore, you want to come out here and talk about keeping Arizona drug-free while in that little rattlesnake Arizona Fiesta Bowl stadium out there, you're selling Budweiser, Bud Light, Coors, all that kind of stuff. Talk about drugs. How many people are leaving those games every Sunday, the home games of the Arizona Cardinals, every Sunday after having drank beer after beer after beer? Hell, I'll bet you got people out in the parking lots that are chugging off of kegs and cases of beer out there, and you just love it and let it happen and celebrate it. It's no big deal for that drug, is it? Yeah, and let's talk about the players on the team, too. You really want me to believe that the Arizona Cardinals have a drug-free organization? Really? Those team doctors on the sidelines there and these guys that are pulling a hamstring or busting out an ACL or just the general day-to-day wear and tear that an offensive lineman, let's say, goes through on a weekly basis in the NFL, and you want me to believe you're really drug-free? No, I'm sure that the Vicodins and the Percocets and the Demerols and all the little anti-inflammatory, I'm sure there's no problem with those in the locker room of the Arizona Cardinals. But that wacky tobacco, that devil's lettuce, that hippie grass, we got to keep that away. Look, we are talking about people who use this for medical purposes. And I am offended when they come out with this thing, only 2% would really be seriously ill. What they're talking about there is they're estimating how many people would have cancer or AIDS, right? Serious terminal illnesses. And then they're saying that everybody else who'd qualify for medical marijuana, that's not serious. Like multiple sclerosis or Lou Gehrig's disease or epilepsy or irritable bowel or GERD or migraine headaches. People laugh about that. Oh, they're just faking it. They just want their weed for their, because they want to get high. Have you ever lived with someone who gets migraine headaches? You'd know that it's no joke. They continue to demonize people who can get effective relief from medical marijuana. Why is it so bad if someone's in pain and they smoke weed and they feel better? You don't seem to have any problem if they pop an acetaminophen every day, and the FDA has come out and said that we have got a serious problem in this nation of people overusing these painkillers, leading to severe hepatotoxicity. Their livers are dying because they're popping too many Tylenols, too many Advils, too many Aleve, too many ibuprofens. Right? We got no problem with that. Pop a pill, pop a pill, pop a pill. You can't turn on the television in Arizona without seeing a drug commercial at least every 10 minutes. And yet you got a problem with people who want to use marijuana medically. It's 14 years and 14 states into it. You've lost already. You're going to lose this vote, Mr. Bidwell. You've just blown $10,000 of your money. So I guess there's a happy ending to this story after all, because it's not going to work. Your demonization, your lies cannot stand anymore. We've got the Google, we've got the truth, we've got the science, we've got the logic, the reason, and now the history behind us. Medical marijuana will be a reality in Arizona Arizona in 2010.
Well, I'm going to calm Russ down.
Woo! I'm having a good time. It's good to have you guys back. This show is hard to do by myself. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support NORML Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
The fact is today, people don't go to jail for possession of marijuana. I know you like to pretend it does, and there's a lot of misinformation about that, but finding somebody in jail or prison for a first-time nonviolent offender for possession of marijuana is like finding a unicorn. You find one, you will make a big story because it doesn't exist. Finding somebody in jail or prison for a first-time nonviolent offender for possession of marijuana is like finding a unicorn, finding a unicorn, finding a unicorn.
NORML Show Live, the National Wildlife Refuge for Marijuana Unicorns.
I'm gonna light me a pipe of inspiration. I'm gonna blow away troubles from my head. I'm gonna leave this plastic place to your plastic people race and travel to a better place and travel to a better place and travel to a better place instead.
It's time for your daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today we bring you tunes for Roots Monday, our celebration of the music that evolved into the popular modern music of today. We pick the best of blues, country, folk, and jazz with a 420 feel and serve it up for you every Monday. Brought to you by Cannabis Carry in Astoria, Oregon, and CannabisFantastic.com. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on NORML Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. 22 and a half after the hour. It's great to have Cannabis Carry here in the studio with our Roots Monday tune.
Nice. I don't really know a lot about this band. The band's called Entire Cities. I do know they hail from Toronto, Canada. And that there's quite a few of them. I think I have a picture up on the website when
like
that
a 9-piece band, 7-piece
band?
Yeah,
something like that. Although this song really is kind of scaled down. The song's not particularly about marijuana, but it does allude to it a couple times in the lyrics. It's called Cop Song, and it's a really nice, easy-picking, strummy folk song to ease us into the week. So here we go, Cop Song.
Looks like he has seen a ghost. My hands keep pulling words from air. I keep on staring at his head. I keep missing what he's saying. I stashed what I had. They can't put me away. My real name wouldn't help anyway. Then back to her uncle's house. He keeps damn hands to himself. We tell him all about the bar, but he won't say a word. I fixed the sink. He was in the war. She's counting change. He's never short.
Copy of that song for your iPod? Check out the Daily Toker Tunes at the Stash blog by surfing to stash.normal.org and choosing Media and then Toker Tunes from the main menu.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527.
Legalization, decriminalization, lowest law enforcement priority, medical marijuana, ganja sacrament, consumer cannabis, industrial hemp. The world of marijuana law reform involves many different aspects of cannabis that interact nearly every public policy discussion in America, including healthcare, the economy, global climate change, law enforcement in prisons, immigration, religion, free speech, energy policy, and war. Now, we take a look at how re-legalizing marijuana will change the world in our NORML Show Live Cannabis Conversations.
All right, we've got an interview that I pre-recorded last week with Professor Martin Carcieri. It had to do with an article he had written that I had gotten through my email called Obama, the 14th Amendment, and the Drug War. So we'll play this pre-recorded interview for you now. Welcome back, everyone. We're really glad to have joining us today Martin Carcieri, who's an associate professor of political science at San Francisco State University, a professor of constitutional law, and a published author on the subject, who's here to shed some light on the Supreme Court's look at marijuana and how they managed to prohibit marijuana in the first place. So, Professor Carcieri, thanks for joining us here on NORML Show Live.
Thanks for inviting me.
You know, we look at these issues quite a bit, and oftentimes I get people who don't know a whole lot about the law or the Constitution who will write in asking, you know, how can they ban marijuana? Why is marijuana banned? And this really came to a head with the case of Angel Rach. She's the woman in California with inoperable brain tumors, protected under Prop 215, growing her own marijuana in California for personal purposes, no interstate commerce whatsoever, and yet the Supreme Court said, no, she can't do that. The medical marijuana laws don't count. Can you explain to our listeners how the court came to this decision and if any problems you see with that decision?
Well, sure. I critiqued this decision at some length. It was an opinion written by, the majority opinion was by Justice Stevens, who I ordinarily admire, but I think the court had it completely wrong for the reasons that you suggest. Angel Rach and Diane Monson growing marijuana on their own property and consuming it on their own property, to my mind, is not remotely interstate commerce. It's not commerce because no money changes hands. It's simply somebody growing and consuming something on their property, and it's not interstate. A plant planted in the ground is about as intrastate as you can get. And the difficulty is that if Congress can reach something like that under its, power to regulate interstate commerce, then there's really nothing that it cannot reach. And that's a problem because, in effect, what that means is that, and this is what I challenge the court for, in effect it means that the Commerce Clause, in effect, means that Congress can do anything that it wants. And if we can take key constitutional language and make it mean virtually the opposite of what it plainly says, then there's not much point in writing down a constitution.
Yeah.
So this is part of the reason that I got into that case and wrote a couple of articles critiquing the court's opinion.
You know, in that decision, the Raich decision, the court leaned heavily on Wickard-Filburn case, that case about wheat and a farmer growing his own wheat when there was rationing of it during World War II. And the word fungibility came into our lexicon, the idea that marijuana is marijuana, whether it's medical, illegal, whatever. Doesn't that decision, though, basically say that Angel Rach couldn't grow her own medical marijuana because it infringed on the illegal marijuana market?
Right. That's part of the rationale. And again, that's fine. I suppose we can debate about that at some abstract level, but the fact remains, as you pointed out already, what she was engaged in was not remotely interstate commerce. And so we can introduce other, concepts like fungibility and so forth, but to my mind, that's simply a smokescreen. And by the way, let me say, in general, I join, the liberal members of the court on a lot of issues, but on this issue, I found that the dissenting opinions in Gonzalez v. Raich by Justices O'Connor, Rehnquist, and Thomas were heroic opinions, because these were people who are inclined to be conservative, but their commitment to federalism and the idea that there are limits on what Congress can do led them to side with, liberal social policy. So I had to admire them for that.
Believe me, I was shocked for the first time in my life having to agree with Justice Thomas as well. Let's go a little deeper into this issue, because as you studied the Raich case and the whole implications with Prop 215, you started to take a broader view of this with respect to how marijuana prohibition affects all of us. And this led to an article, and this was what was forwarded to me and got my attention and wanted me to talk to you, is this Obama, the 14th Amendment, and the drug war article, where you look at the equal protection under the law and some issues with regard to marijuana prohibition. Let's get into that a little bit. What is the thesis of this article?
Sure. My basic, I have two theses, but the central core thesis is simply as follows. Under well-established U.S. Supreme Court case law, particularly under the 14th Amendment, federal marijuana prohibition is properly subject to what the court has called strict scrutiny. So that's my basic point, and that's contrary to what a lot of lower federal court and state Supreme Courts have held. A lot of these courts have held otherwise, but on my reading of the relevant 14th Amendment case law, the court has established that when government imposes burdens on bodily autonomy, that is to say, control over the boundaries and contents of one's body, the government can do that sometimes. However, what it has to do is pass strict scrutiny, which is to say there's a presumption against the constitutionality of the law, and government has to show both as to the means and the ends of the law that it can pass the high standard of strict scrutiny. Now, the court has never done that, but what I try to do is to set the law straight and to say, look, if the court ever considers federal marijuana prohibition under the 14th Amendment, this is the standard that it should use. And I would also say, although I don't go on to argue this because that's a whole separate article, I go on to say that I don't think that marijuana prohibition, particularly for adults behind closed doors, could possibly pass strict scrutiny. And so that's my core thesis. I go on from there, Russ, to say that since President Obama is, as president, a constitutional actor, he doesn't have to wait around for the Supreme Court to catch up on this. I say that if he is reelected, gets a second term, such that he's a lame duck because he'll be term limited under the 22nd Amendment, I say that given his agreement with my jurisprudential thesis, he should go before Congress during his first State of the Union address in his second term and call on Congress to knock off at least this part of the drug war by rescheduling marijuana under the Controlled Substances Act to a lower schedule, which at least would allow states to go their own way if they want to.
Professor Carcieri, that is definitely change I can believe in. I'm looking forward to that day. With respect to this strict scrutiny, it sounds to me as if kind of what we're saying, and correct me if I'm painting too broadly here, is that when it comes to your bodily autonomy as a citizen of the United States or just a human being, basically things are legal until the government can prove they're harmful. Is that too broad?
Legal until the government can prove they're harmful. Well, I have to tell you, I'm not sure that's accurate because it doesn't sound like that describes the law of marijuana. It's not nearly as harmful as alcohol and tobacco, which everybody knows, and yet it is a crime under federal law, while alcohol and tobacco are regulated for reasons everybody understands.
Yeah.
So,
I guess I'm pointing out, like if we were to obey this doctrine of strict scrutiny, that's what the government would be having to prove. They'd have to prove beyond it.
Yeah, exactly right. When it invades bodily autonomy. So let me give two good examples to kind of help chart out the map because there are a number of precedents, earlier cases that the court has handed down. Under Roe versus Wade, for example, a woman has a limited right to get an abortion. So up to a point, she has the constitutional right, which at the end of the day, I think she should have, to expel a human fetus from her body. So that's an example of where the court has looked at limits on bodily autonomy and have said that up to a point, a woman has a presumptive right to do that. So that's, the court has recognized bodily autonomy there. As a second example, in 2003, you may recall that in a case called Texas v. Lawrence, the court struck down state anti-sodomy laws. So in effect, what they said is that behind closed doors, a man can have part of another man's body inside his body. So if he wants. And so again, bodily autonomy, and I could give other cases as well, but in general, the upshot is that the court has established that laws, whether state, federal, or local, that burden bodily autonomy, control over the contents and boundaries of our bodies, there's a presumption against those laws such that government has to satisfy strict scrutiny before those laws can be held to be constitutional.
I'm glad you brought up the Lawrence case because in some of my spare time, I blog for a gay and lesbian blog, and we bring up that case a lot within Connecticut v. Griswold with respect to reproductive freedom and so on. And I've often pointed out that there is a parallel between the gay rights movement and the marijuana relegalization movement in that it all has to do with your privacy and your bodily autonomy behind closed doors. I love that you're emphasizing that in your thesis. That's wonderful. As we go on in this discussion, Professor Carcieri, I'm just wondering what's the next step as far as, if we have this plan, if we have this notion that the courts need to give strict scrutiny to this, how do we make that happen? Are there suits we can file? What do we have to do?
Boy, good question. I think there's a number of ways to take this out. Again, my thought was that given that that is the state of the law and that thankfully we now have a president who's not only pretty smart, but who is actually a constitutional lawyer and who could understand all this, I'm thinking that the quickest way to change the law in this area would be for Obama, recognizing that my thesis is a sound one, to go before Congress in his next term and calling them to call up this war. And I really think that Obama might be inclined to do that. He certainly ought to. He will be a lame duck, right? He cannot get elected to a third term, so in that sense, he's got nothing to lose. Certainly, Obama will have a bright, bright future. He's got nothing to fear. And so I'm hoping that if he's reelected, that he will go before Congress, and he can't force Congress to do anything. Congress is basically in charge of federal law, but a president can, spur a Congress to do some things under the right circumstances. So that's the first thing. Beyond that, Russ, I suppose that I'll have to leave it to the practicing lawyers to figure out how to bring this up. I know that there are lawyers who, in their marijuana litigation, have attempted the kind of argument that I'm making, but again, like I say, they come into a lot of headwinds in the lower federal courts and in the state Supreme Courts. And so it may be that ultimately we'd have to take it to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I'm not sure what would happen there. I've learned not to try to speculate about what the Supreme Court is going to do because I've been proven wrong before. But again, my basic answer to what you're saying is that I think the political branches ought to act first. That's the quickest and really the most legitimate way. We should not have to wait around for the courts to fix all the problems in our society. And especially if we have a president who understands constitutional law, I think that could be an advantage.
Yeah, I certainly hope that could happen. I'm also going to talk to my lawyer friends about a plan B because when we look at President Obama so far, he seems to be fine with warrantless wiretapping, not prosecuting the Bush administration for their constitutional abuses, and he's also said legalization is not in his vocabulary. So I'm crossing my fingers, but I'm hoping we've got a plan B in mind here. Professor Carcieri, before we let you go, I want to give you the chance to, free range here. Any other parts of this topic you'd like to discuss? Or any questions I haven't thought of asking you?
Sure. I appreciate it. I wanted to say that I share your disappointment, first of all, with the Obama administration. I do appreciate the fact that Obama and Attorney General Holder have announced that they will not crack down. They will not have the DEA crack down in states that are following medical marijuana laws. So that's good news. But at the same time, you may know that just less than 2 weeks ago, in the Los Angeles Times, there was an opinion editorial piece that was joined by Obama's drug czar, Gil Kurlikowski, and the co-authors were John Walters, Barry McCaffrey, William Bennett, and other people that those of us in this line of work know are drug warriors. And I was so disappointed because this was simply another op-ed piece that was full of fallacies. Fortunately, a week later, Paul Armentano of NORML published a response, which was a very effective response. But if I do have a minute, I'd like to say there are many problems with the article by Kurlikowski et al. But in particular, the two constitutional problems are as follows. They say, one of the things they say is that, look, as things stand, law enforcement officers don't even usually enforce the marijuana laws against adults. So that's a very telling admission, because what they're saying in effect is that even they know that the marijuana laws as applied to adults behind closed doors make no sense. So what they're saying in effect is we ought to just leave it there, keep the laws against, keep prohibition on the books and trust the police to decide when to apply them and when not. Now, there are a lot of good policemen. I'm not here to bash the police at all. However, let me just take it to the quick. As a black man, President Obama is not, I think, going to be quite so cheerful about the idea that we can always trust the police to administer laws on the books that everybody knows shouldn't be enforced, but will do so in an even-handed way. The other thing I'd like to say is the following. Another major constitutional problem with this kind of argument, the kind that the Gil Kurlikowski, et cetera, made, is that they literally ignore the equality dimension of constitutional law. Let me tell you what I mean. They're saying in effect, look, our Constitution protects liberty, but everybody understands that liberties have to be limited in some ways in an ordered society. No doubt about that. The problem is they want to say it's legitimate to end liberty at alcohol and tobacco, you see. We know that those are destructive drugs, but we also understand that in a free society, adults must presumptively be allowed to put into their bodies what they want. So what they want to do, in effect, as you well know, is to say, look, even though we're going to allow these more dangerous drugs for reasons everybody understands, marijuana is such a problem. We've already got enough problems in the society, so let's make marijuana a crime. And the difficulty with that is that people who are engaged in a exercise of liberty, namely private marijuana consumption, are less of a threat to legitimate societal interest than people who drink alcohol or smoke tobacco, especially in public. So in other words, they're simply ignoring the equality dimension, right? They are all for imprisoning people whose exercise of liberty poses far less a threat to legitimate governmental interest than people whose exercise of liberty poses far more. So as a constitutional scholar, I wanted to get those two critiques of this position on record, because it's the same old stuff I've seen before, and again, it's so unfortunate to see that the current drug czar has joined this article.
Professor Carcieri is an associate professor of political science at San Francisco State University and the author of the article Obama, the 14th Amendment, and the Drug War. Professor Carcieri, is there an online source or email contact information you'd like to give out to our listeners so they can catch up on that article and your other writings?
You bet. If people want to email me, I'm in the political science department at San Francisco State University. If they simply get on the political science department website at San Francisco State University and click on faculty, they can see a little bit of a bio on me and also see my contact information. Beyond that, and if anybody wants, by the way, if they email me, I will be glad to attach a copy of this article to them. This article is forthcoming in the fall issue of the Akron Law Review, but if people would like to see an advanced copy of it, I would be glad to send it along to them.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you so much. It addresses something that a lawyer friend of mine named John Lucy, we call it Lucy's Law. When it comes to drugs,
the most devastating effect of the war on marijuana is that it is a war on everyday people like you and me. All week, we speak to the doctors, scientists, celebrities, and politicians who make up the professionals fighting for cannabis liberty. But we never forget about the tens of millions who use cannabis, the millions who need medical access to cannabis, and the hundreds of thousands arrested every year for cannabis, and the tens of thousands imprisoned under our marijuana laws. At NORML, we are the Cannabis Consumers Lobby, and we take this opportunity to share the experience of our cannabis community.
We've got some recording live from this Saturday's Boston Freedom Rally. Ann Davis, Rick Cusick from High Times, Chris Goldstein, and Alan St. Pierre. Hey, we are live at the Boston Freedom Rally at the Boston Common, and I assume we're speaking with Rick Cusick from High Times?
You certainly are, man, and you are missing a fantastic event. I mean, really, I think like maybe 40,000, 50,000 people here today.
Wow, that's great. I was at Freedom Rally last year, and they had estimated crowds around 30 to 40. So you think it's bigger than last year's?
Yeah, absolutely bigger than last year. It was a perfect day for it, and it's coming out, and we just pulled off the 420, and it rocked, man.
Oh, yeah.
It was great.
Far out.
Yeah, no, it's really something this year.
Who are some of the acts that are performing this year?
Well, you know, I did the 420 countdown with Alan St. Pierre and with Keith Strop and with Ann Davis from New Jersey NORML. And as soon as I got done doing that, Age Against the Machine, which is a Rage Against the Machine cover band, came out and rocked this place. They were a great band, and the guy at the end of his set took his beautiful guitar and beat the hell out of it all over the stage. And, did a Hendrix style, tear up the guitar and throw it into the crowd kind of deal.
Right
awesome.
on. Well,
absolutely awesome.
We
they got Onyx who's going to close the night tonight.
Onyx is. Oh, wow. That's excellent.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Hey, I know that, Massachusetts decriminalized marijuana in 2008, so you've been going to these freedom rallies for a long time. Has it made a huge difference in the crowds and how they behave and act during Freedom Rally?
Absolutely. I mean, it used to be, first of all, before 2008, they would bust, no kidding, 50 to 60 every year just on a quota. That's just the way it was. Me and Keith Strop got busted in 2007 on the quota. And then they decriminalized in 2008. In the first year, that was like 2008, people were a little tentative. In 2009, they got a little bit more, and now they got the idea. And here in 2010, they just came out today, and it falls out. They're just, everybody here, it's a celebration as much as anything else. And as I said, when I addressed the crowd, I said, in my term, the last 3 years, I watched them decriminalize here in here in Massachusetts, and it's changed from being a protestable to a celebration.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Well, Rick,
it's such a great thing to see.
Yeah.
Like I tell you, man, we're talking 50,000 people here. I'm not really sure, but the entire park is packed.
And the police officers, that are attending the rally there, how's their reaction to this? Now that they're not able to bust people.
Well, they still try at the front a little bit. They're still hassling people here and there. But the worst they can do is give them a ticket.
Yeah.
It gets them $100. The joke is I'll sit down and smoke a joint, and I'll hold a $100 bill up.
There you go. That's the way to do it. Right on.
That's my kid. That's the cost to come to the event.
Yeah.
But, Boston police, they don't give up easy. They all, they got attitude. But again, I think they realize, because today at 420, we did the countdown and we hit 420. This extraordinary cloud of smoke came out of thousands and thousands of people.
The smell of freedom, man.
So it wasn't 3 years ago. I got busted for smoking a third of a joint. This year I watched 30,000 people blow weed at 1 minute.
Oh, we love the change, man. It's beautiful to see. And Rick Cusick from High Times, thanks so much for giving us a view there of the Boston Freedom Rally.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. You do great work yourself, so keep it up, man.
Thank you, Rick. Hey, is Ann Davis from NORML, New Jersey there with you?
Yep, hold on. Here's Ann. Hey, Ann.
Hey, Ron.
Hi, Ann. Ann Davis from NORML, New Jersey, Executive Director on the phone with us here. You're at Boston Freedom Rally. Is this your first rally?
Is this my first rally? Hell no. We were here last year. There's even more people here now than I've ever seen.
Yeah, Rick was just telling us it looks like they've broken any records they might have had previously for this. So that's great news. How are things going for you there in Boston and in the Northeast in general?
Well, in Boston, we got a lot of New Jersey college students that signed on as members to NORML New Jersey. It's been great out here. I was up on the stage with Alan and Keith for the 420 count-off, and all these masses of people, a cloud of smoke right in the middle of Boston, and the police are just being cool. It's a great day, great place, and it makes you see the progress that we're making, you know?
Yeah, it does. And, people being able to gather like that, especially in an East Coast location, it kind of shows to me, the gathering itself proves how wonderful marijuana is. I mean, have you been to like gatherings where there's 50,000 people and there's alcohol being served? Can you describe the difference?
Exactly. Rowdy crowds, fights break out. And here it has just been a peaceful day. All the I say kids, come get it up there, but all the college students have been absolutely amazing. Really respectful crowd, and everybody's just enjoying a day in the park.
Right on. And as far as New Jersey goes, we've been covering your story out there with the medical marijuana law and the intransigence of the governor, Christie, who doesn't want to seem to obey the will of the people. Do you have any updates for us on what's happening in New Jersey?
What we do know is they're promising to have the patient registry up and running as of October 1st. What we're unsure of is if they're going to have the regulations that are going to set forth the guidelines for the alternative treatment centers, their whole application process and regulations. We're not sure if they're going to have them done on time. So it's wait and see right now what happens on October 1st. And if not, we're going to have to make some noise again to make some things happen. I think Rhode Island's experiencing something similar with, delays caused by the administrative process. So we got to figure out a team state game plan to stop any further delays.
Right on. And you were a High Times Freedom Fighter of the Month recently, and you're the newly elected director of NORML New Jersey. Do you have any plans on bringing any rallies or protests to New Jersey in the near future?
Oh, we would love to. We just need more volunteers to get it together. There's so much going on in the state with the doctors and the patients, and hard to get it all done. So the more that people join NORML and become involved, the bigger events we can put on in New Jersey. But we do have a Halloween party planned for October 22nd. Details to follow for all members.
Oh, excellent. That sounds like a lot of fun. So encourage everyone to check out NORML New Jersey's website. It's normalnj.org, I believe. Do I get that right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ann Davis, thanks so much for joining us. And if you have Chris Goldstein handy, let's go back to him.
You want Chris? Hold on.
Hey, Russ.
Hey, Chris, just finished up with Ann Davis with NORML New Jersey. Of course, you've been working a lot in Pennsylvania to help bring change there with Philly NORML. Do you have any updates for us on the fight for medical marijuana in Pennsylvania, I mean?
There's a couple of interesting things coming up. We had a hearing a few weeks ago in Pittsburgh where Jack Cole, who's right next to his tent here with Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. It's great to see Jack here today. Jack was out testifying in Pittsburgh. Lester Greenspoon Skyped into the hearings, and the medical marijuana bill is moving forward in the House in Pennsylvania. We're also waiting for the first set of hearings in the state Senate of Pennsylvania. We're getting strong co-sponsorship, and also polling in Pennsylvania is just wonderful. I mean, 80% support, bipartisan support at that. But, also, too, they're doing one of those strange things for us. They're going to ban Spice, all that stuff. And one of the guys who was at the conference this year, Jehan Marku, has been a really great voice and a wonderful resource for us in this regard. Jehan actually worked with some of the synthetic cannabinoids as they're supposed to be used in a laboratory setting and has a lot to say about it. And they're looking to ban it. It's just so weird, We're waiting for a voting hearing on medical marijuana, but they get 27 co-sponsors and a voting hearing in the Judiciary Committee in like 5 weeks, on a spice ban.
Right.
It's so strange these days, and it's so fruitless, really. I mean, there's no field test for it. There's no intoxication test for it. I mean, it really is just a saber-rattling kind of a joke thing to do. But look how fast they'll move on something like that. So we're going to use that against them and say, hey, look, medical marijuana deserves voting hearings if you're going to bring something together as close as a spice ban. And they work for us here. So, interesting stuff happening in Pennsylvania for sure.
Yeah, it's just amazing how quick that they will react to, the scaremongering of spice, but the legitimate science and research and the people behind medical marijuana they'll drag their feet on. That's just remarkable to me. Let's talk about the Freedom Rally, a little bit about what's going on there. Who are some of the groups? You mentioned Jack Cole and LEAP is right next to you. Who are some of the groups representing at Freedom Rally this year?
Oh, it was great. Not only that, Alan and Keith are here from National NORML High Times this year, Danny Danko. A lot of the folks who are just out in Portland, like you and me. It's just amazing to see everybody being so bi-coastal with reform right now. And there are a lot of people out here, Russ. I've been at this thing for the last few years. I think it was a lot bigger than last year even. And we saw a huge crowd sort of over the hill this year and a lot less police interaction. There seemed to be a much more comfortable atmosphere. But also, too, Steve Bloom was here. It was great. Me and Steve were able to do the 420 countdown on Stingray Stage, and there was a lot of people over there today. And we had an excellent time doing that with Stacey Costner of Students for Sensible Drug Policy. So sort of a good array of the reform groups out here and a lot of really cool vendors. Just a lot of great food, a lot of interesting products out here today for sure, and generally a wonderful atmosphere. When I say it's true, you guys have these amazing rallies on the West Coast, like in Portland with MSTOC that just happened, or Seattle's HempFest. But we have this once a year in Boston. It's a regional thing. It's the biggest thing that happens on the East Coast. And honestly, people talk about it all year, and today has been great. It's been one of those peaceful days where you can see the future of an end to prohibition out here right now, Russ. I'm looking at a crowd of peaceful people. There are no fights. There's no cops, dragging drunk people out. There's a band playing on stage. There's a haze of music over the crowd. Everybody is smiling, happy, getting some food at the end of the day. This is the future of legalization right here. It's like a more peaceful America. I go to baseball games all the time. This is not what a gathering of 50,000 people looks like, for a Phillies game. But I'll tell you what, for the Boston Freedom Rally, it's a really awesome crowd, and it really is the future of America right here. I'm standing right here in it.
It smells like freedom to me all the way out here from the West Coast. I sure enjoyed Freedom Rally last year. Looking forward to it next year. We also just wrapped up NORML National Conference, and there's some talk about where we'll have the conference next year. I think Boston would be a good place.
Oh, man, please bring it to Boston. Boston could have the NORML conference. We could have this wonderful time. But I'll tell you what, Russ. The conference we just had in Portland and the environment that you guys have at the Oregon NORML Cannabis Cafe, as wonderful as it is, unfortunately experiencing it for 3 days has left us all so bittersweet for that. We're all homesick for Portland already, man. You guys have done something amazing out there. What we see where you are, Russ, and you and Madeline, what you guys have done there with that cafe is created an environment, the first I've ever seen in America, other than these one-day things that we have. You create a consistent environment free of fear, and that was so amazing to see. So, as much as I would like to bring it to Boston, I'd like to see it come back to Portland one day, because it was one of the best host cities I've ever had for the NORML conference. So thank you for your hospitality.
Oh, thank you so much. There's a lot of cities in the running. There's been some nominations for Denver, for Chicago, for Washington, D.C. We'll be making the decision soon, and we'll make sure that everyone here at NORML Show Live hears about it first. Chris Goldstein, Rick Cusick, Ann Davis from NORML, New Jersey. All of you, thank you so much. Oh, that was a good time talking to those guys. Alan St. Pierre also called in a little bit later in the interview. I'm still talking to Chris, and the little Skype goes up, bloop, bloop, and Alan's calling in. We just decided to go past that because you couldn't really hear him. He was backstage with the band still playing, so it was a little difficult. Hey, thanks for tuning in to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation. This podcast will be up on iTunes in just about 2 hours. Meanwhile, stick around for Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We take your calls, and we're going to talk with Cannabis Carrie and Ganja John about the last week. Carrie's got a great story about beautiful Astoria, Oregon. So until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Take it on one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down.